Mentioned to you offline, I'm very fond of a term called logarithmic decay, which speaks to little by little by little by little by little, then all at once. It's almost like going over a waterfall where you see the pitch of the water starting to get steeper and steeper and steeper until you fall off the cliff. And so I'm not saying that this is going to happen today or tomorrow. It could, but what I am saying is that we are witnessing little by little by little by little by little the chipping away at the dollar hegemony. I mean, let's look at the fact that, for example, every single OPEC country, all of them, are on the Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative, the largest infrastructure project in human history. Let's look at the fact that Saudi Arabia indeed did just join BRICS and was formally admitted 2 days ago. Let's look at the fact that Saudi Arabia did indeed join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is the largest regional financial and military organization on the planet. And they joined the BRICS New Development Bank. You can see where they're going, but what became very provocative to me is what we are witnessing here right now. And that is they told the folks at the World Bank meeting earlier this year that, yeah, you know what, we are interested in listening to other countries who want to buy oil in other currencies. And this is a very, very big deal. And when you look at the coalition of countries, so you mentioned the size of the BRICS in and of themselves right now, it's growing in significance. In fact, this year alone, the BRICS countries are responsible for more GDP globally than are the G7. Just a little bit, but it's beginning and growing, as is their union. But when you put together these groups, the Belt Road Initiative, which as in and of itself is responsible for close to 75% of human population, 50% of global GDP, along with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Eurasian Economic Union, who the president of Belarus says needs to all join BRIC because they're largely the same countries with the same goals and ambitions. And you put that together with BRIC, you're talking the majority of human population, north of 85% of human population, the majority of global GDP, the two of the three largest nuclear arsenals on the planet, and the stranglehold on the majority of the world's natural resources, energy in particular. So yeah, this is a big deal, Michelle, and it's not one to take lightly as far as I'm concerned. Guys are going green, thanks for the memories, or Saudi Arabia making that comment, but it's one step removed, and it's something, again, that should not be taken lightly whatsoever. And when you look at the countries that have been admitted, there, as you mentioned, there's actually 20 countries that have formally applied and up to another 20 that have informally applied. Every single one of them has one thing in common for sure, and that is they are very, very rich in natural resources, in particular energy, or the rare earth metals needed to make batteries, or precious metals, or all of the above, and also very, very, very tied into strategic shipping lanes like the Red Sea, like the Straits of Hormuz. And if these countries that are on the list actually do become BRICS members, they will control the Straits of Hormuz and the Red Sea, and they will control very strategic shipping lanes. And they have the new BRICS Naval Alliance, where a lot of these countries are banding together to patrol the Indian Ocean and perhaps ultimately the Red Sea, where, you have the U.S. Navy, who's been doing all of that heavy lifting for a while. But ironically, whether you're talking the Belt Road Initiative or you're talking the BRICS, I think the president of Iran said it best. He says the most important problem is represented by three issues. The first is energy production. Okay, they got that covered. The second is energy transfer. Okay, got that covered. That's the shipping lanes and whatnot. And the third is energy consumption. And when you talk about these three issues, he says BRICS has solved that. And they are indeed, this is their very methodical plan, where they're doing it little by little by little by little by little. Look, Jim Rickards is a man I respect a lot, Michelle, and he made the statement this last summer that in the meeting in Johannesburg that he would expect two things to happen, both of which I agree with, mind you. One, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Eurasian Economic Union would join BRICS. Well, the president of Belarus is calling for a summit to do just that. Didn't happen in August. He got a little pushback. That's okay. The second thing he talked about was that they would issue a common settlement currency. Now, the difference between a settlement currency and a reserve currency is you can trade in something, but when you have excess, what do you do with it? So it's always gone into U.S. Treasuries, the most stable liquid market in the world, although that hasn't worked out so well for them over the last year or two. But the bottom line is simply this. I think that there will indeed, because that didn't come to fruition, so the finance ministers were tasked with going back to the drawing board and coming back to the meeting in Russia in October and presenting their findings. It will happen. After all, gold was reclassified the only other tier 1 asset in the world by the BIS in 2019. And lo and behold, is it a coincidence that the world's central banks, largely these countries that we're talking about, have bought more gold over the last 2 years than any time in central bank history. There will be a moment, just like the Russian finance ministers promised us, where they issue a common settlement currency, and I think it will be pegged to commodities using blockchain technology to show the veracity and the immutability. And Sandman, where he believes there's already 150 countries that have agreed, or somewhere in that neighborhood, agreed to dump the dollar in unison at one point. But what is that one point? When are they ready to do that? When is the critical mass? When do they have enough influence on multiple levels to make that trade or to make that move? I don't know. But Michelle, to me, you don't see these types of moves that are accelerating in these relationships, that are accelerating, and the verbiage that we hear, the rhetoric that we hear, without there being something very substantial behind it. And again, I have a curse, and my curse is I see things, always have, I think, long before they happen. And I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to put all of this together and see it. Now, what is the fuse that ignites it? What is the springboard or the impetus that makes that moment where countries forsake the dollar? I don't know what it is or when it is, but I will tell you, I honestly do believe that this is the ultimate goal. And when you put it into context with an administration whose, as we've talked about before, main economic advisor, his whole thesis, Jared Bernstein, is to lose the reserve status and look at weaponizing the dollar. Look, if the reserve status was so important to us, then why the hell would we tell Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world we're going green when it is the linchpin to the dollar hegemony, the petrodollar? But we're going green, so it's all right, you guys. We're going a different direction. And the countries that they are uniting with, which represent the majority of human population, are the ones that have all of the world's oil and natural gas and rare earth. I am a patriot. I am someone who represents the least likely character to achieve what I have. I came from nothing, literally 33 years ago. And my father and I started this company in a closet-sized office in Minneapolis from nothing, but a loan from a friend who, my dad's middle name is Miles. His best friend who lent us some money is Franklin. This country has presented me more opportunities than I could have ever dreamed of. But I have to tell you that I think indeed we are heading down a very, very dangerous path. And when I'm that provocative, although I think they could say one of two things. They could say we're taking other currencies besides dollars, and just that admission alone.
But they've said that. They've practically said that.
They said we're open to it, but they haven't said we're going to. We'll take these 5 or 6 currencies. Or maybe it's more along the lines of they just say to all of the BRICS members, which represent the majority of human population, is that we're going to trade in local currencies, or we're going to trade in gold, or whatever it may be. If the desire or the need to hold US dollars is waning to that degree, or in fact is completely disincentivized, it creates a massive, massive problem for the US. And I think, look, a country that has chosen inflation over austerity the way that we have, a country that is, when you factor in unfunded liabilities, 150 trillion in the hole with 5 trillion in assets, a country that is in essence insolvent, that goes around the word bullying people and doing things in a coercive manner, I think is incentivizing the world to find alternatives. And that's just it, is that, yes, all people say, well, the dollar and the US bond market is the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry hamper, but I think that's where gold comes into play. I think that's where blockchain technology comes into play.
And that's why I want to get clear on this flipping of the switch, because we are already seeing these countries saying we're going to trade in our own currencies and doing so. We're already seeing oil being sold for dirham and for rupees and for rubles and for petro yuan converted into gold. It's already happening. So again, what is that sort of watershed moment that makes that switch flip irreversibly? What is that? An
outright admission, an outright statement from OPEC. We're not taking dollars anymore. I mean, Brazil just applied to OPEC. You have the majority of all of the oil production in the world. If they say we don't want dollars any longer, it creates a very, very, very big problem.
Why would they do that? Why would they say we don't want dollars anymore?
Well, because, I mean, look at what happens if you end up on the wrong side of the Western ideology. You can have your assets frozen. And in fact, even in the case of what's now being discussed, is to confiscate those assets and use them to rebuild the Ukraine. Look at what we did to Iraq. We went in there under a false pretense 20 years ago, and we're still occupying their country. They made $90 billion in oil revenue last year. They asked the government this year for $1 billion, and we said no. Really?
But Andy, is moving away from dollars the same as saying we're no longer using dollars? I mean, I can see from the BRICS plus perspective the incentive to reduce the reliance on the dollar, and as we discussed, the weaponization of it certainly hasn't helped. But why go to the extreme of saying we're not accepting dollars at all?
Because I think, Michelle, there's a large portion of the world, much larger portion of the world than is found here in North America, that is tired of 500 years of Western dominance and suppression and coercion. And I think that this is the rallying cry that's bringing everyone to the table, that people want to I think have the standard of living and not be told how to do things. This rule-based order where we're the ones setting the rules and everyone else has to follow by them. And when you see the way all of these countries are pushing back against the West and our ideological viewpoints maybe don't mesh so well with a large portion of the world, but a lot of these countries who may have felt this way haven't had the ability to do this in and of themselves on their own. Like a country like Venezuela, who has the largest known oil reserves in the world, they just formally applied to BRICS. So you find safety in numbers, and I think that's kind of what it is. This is our shot to have the life that we want and to do it under our terms. And they are finding safety in numbers, I believe. So not to mention that, I mean, look at it this way. Why would you want to sell your oil for dollars, a currency that is being inflated away, literally, as we sit here and watch it literally lose value precipitously? Why would they want to do that? And then reinvest them into treasuries that have been a disaster. And then if you don't do what they tell you to do, or you end up doing something to defend in your mind your own interests, your own political or rather your own border interests or your safety interests, whatever it is. And I'm not, this isn't about, what Putin did was right or wrong, or what Iraq did was right or wrong. These are sovereign countries that are deciding to do what they want to do. And if it falls on the wrong side, well, you're going to get your assets frozen. You're going to get kicked out of SWIFT. You're going to become blacklisted. And I think that is really resonating with a lot of countries around the globe.